Okay, so I'm gonna try to gunk engine degreaser heavy duty. I'm gonna try this, and also I have their engine cleaner degreaser multi-service. No, the block may use things that didn't. So we'll give it 10-15 minutes and we will wash them off. Or we'll probably do a brush and then we'll wash them off. Okay, so here are the parts after they've been cleaned. So now we'll do the cylinder and the head, and we'll probably do the inside of there just to make it all look clean. Okay, so we got it all cleaned up. Okay, so after I ordered some parts, finally getting back to it, we have a new piston and rings, then a timing chain kit, then just a gasket kit. Then I have a niche cylinder because I got a closer look at the older one. Let's see if I can see it. I saw it somewhere. So now let's get this gasket surface cleaned up. I'm just going to use some red emery cloth. Won't scratch it or anything like that. Okay, so for the piston, got our oil ring we'll install. This one. You don't want them overlapping or anything, you just want them touching. Other ring. Be careful not to bend them. Okay, for the second ring, we'll look in the book. So that's, or look at our rings and see which one goes top and which one's the second one. Okay, so there's nothing really in the manual stating what the clearance is, so I'm just gonna go off the instructions here. So, on a 4-stroke, 250cc plus, would be 0.04 millimeter to 0.06 millimeter. This is the top ring. Now we'll take our feeler gauge. A little bit of resistance there. That is good. Now we'll get our second ring. Put that in there. Same thing, center it. They are good. Inner groove on the second ring is going towards the piston. So the exhaust is facing this way of the motor. get it going through the rod. Okay, so now that is in, take one of our clips, install it on the edge of the piston.
So we're putting the engine back in, and I forgot to talk when I was putting everything back together, so I'm going to be commentating over this. So then we just got to put the nuts back into the motor mounts. I didn't get it recorded because I didn't have that much room to move a wrench around. And this was the one that was pretty chewed up from the passenger side because I was using the wrong size. So I decided to put it on the front to get a better bite with the socket. Then here is the oil feed line, I believe it is. There it is connected. I just tightened all the hose clamps to where they were snug. Okay, so like I said before, I had to get a new cylinder because the previous one was pretty gouged. So right here we're just removing that elbow piece and the hose. I had to beat on it because it was on there pretty good. And just cleaning it up with some red emery cloth. And with the new cylinder, I used this water pump and thermostat housing gasket, or RTV, whichever one you want to call it. I put a relatively thick coat all the way around it, just so I know it wouldn't leak. And I just use my finger to spread it around. And then just use the rubber or plastic end of the flathead and just secured it in there. So with all the rust you can see, I kind of left it out in the rain. Okay, so with the timing chain, I wasn't for sure if it was stretched or not. This was the old one, that's the new one. I had to put new marks on the new one because it didn't come with any. So now we're just putting the timing chain over the sprocket. So if you look at the sprocket on the top right of it, there's a timing mark. And I thought the timing mark was on the case. So it is positioned wrong. But I did end up getting it fixed. I don't know if I got a video of it or not. Okay, now we're just going to install the top timing guide. Gonna get that bolt threaded in. I want to say I torqued it to about 8 foot-pounds. So now we're going to get the stator cover put on. Okay, then we're just pushing the wire harness back into the case. And get the flywheel back on. Now we'll get the washer and nut put back on. I believe you're supposed to buy a new nut, but I could not find one, so I just reused the old one. It still looked good to me. Okay, and then now we're just getting the base gasket on that holds the cylinder to the block or bottom end. Okay, and then we'll get the cylinder put on. I did struggle with this for quite a while. A lot of the video has been cut, but for some reason the bottom ring kept getting pushed out. I should have used a ring compressor, but I just didn't have one at the time. So I was just trying to push it in all together. So like I said, a lot of it's been cut. That noise in the background is a lawnmower. Finally got it put on. Now we're just going to take the 4 cylinder bolts and put them into the 4 holes in each corner. Okay, so the cylinder base bolts are torqued 45 to 49 foot-pounds, and this is where the bottom timing guide actually goes in. It snaps right in. And then the smaller cylinder base bolts, those are going to be torqued to 72 to 96 inch-pounds. So right here we are just getting the head gasket put on. And then we're going to put the cylinder head on. Okay, I just have a string going through the chain just so it doesn't fall back into the block. So once we get the cylinder head seated with the cylinder, we'll get the bolts put in, just hand tightened, and just able to get the timing chain and timing gear put on. And then we will torque the cylinder head bolts to specifications. Okay, so now we're going to put the timing gear in. And we're going to get the chain wrapped around it. And the 2 marks on top of the timing gear is to get it at TDC. And if you look at the timing chain closely, just right next to my thumb, you can kind of see where I marked it before. So now that it's in place, we'll get the bolts just hand tightened in, and then we'll get them torqued down. Okay, and these bolts will be torqued down to 60 to 78 inch-pounds. I didn't have an inch-pound torque wrench, so I just did 5 foot-pounds. Now with the timing chain tensioner, I got these bolts torqued down to 84 to 96 inch-pounds. And with the new one, it had a lot bigger spring. So I took the old one, took the spring out, and put it in the new one. You can see how big the difference is when they're right next to each other. I tighten that to 14 foot-pounds. Now with the cylinder head, there is a sequence that you have to follow. So right here, I am just making sure they're all seated before I start torquing them. Also getting the top cylinder mounting put on. I just hand tightened these. Couldn't find a torque spec for them. So first you want to tighten to 22 foot-pounds and then tighten to 51 foot-pounds. And then you want to go through and loosen 180 degrees, and then go through again and loosen another 180 degrees, so a full turn. And I don't know what happened to the other parts, but the next step would be tightened to 11 foot-pounds, and then after it would be tightened a quarter turn, and then tighten another quarter turn, and then they would be set. So this is the last quarter turn that we're tightening right now. And how I'm judging whether it's a quarter turn is just watching the socket where it shows the size and just eyeballing 90 degrees or a quarter turn. Here I'm using my torque wrench just because there wasn't enough room with the other wrench to get in there and tighten it. And these bolts I tightened 72 to 96 inch-pounds. And here I am just cleaning up the gasket surface. Then we'll get this cover put on. And I don't know what happened to the footage, but I did torque these down to 72 to 96 inch-pounds as well. I believe it was just because of how hot it was. My phone was overheating. Okay, and then here we're just getting the starter Bendix put in. And we're just tightening the flywheel down just with an impact. And we're getting the gasket put on. Okay, then here we're going to put the recoil starter on. Then we're just getting all the bolts threaded in. Same thing, lost the footage to me torquing them down, but I torqued them to 5 to 8 foot-pounds. Okay, and I got the oil lines put on, torqued them down to 14 foot-pounds. I didn't get a video of those because I accidentally bent them putting those on, but yeah, they were torqued to 14, all the bolts. And right here, we're just getting that thermostat RTV on. And we're just getting those tightened up. Okay, next we're going to get the back of the clutch cover put on. Getting these 3 bolts tightened up. And there's also this bolt down here. Just get that nice and snug as well. Okay, then here we're just going to get the bracket clutch seal put in with these 3 screws. Just get the screws snugged up. You can't see it very well, but I'm getting the secondary clutch put on, and it just slides right on. I am just tightening the bolt up. And here we're getting the primary put on. Get the bolt hand threaded in. Okay, and with the secondary, we'll torque down to 14 and the primary 40 foot-pounds. So now we're just getting the rocker arm assembly in. And these bolts will get torqued down to 96 to 120 inch-pounds. Then right here, we're just taking the inspection bolt out to get the timing mark. That way we can have top dead center so we can adjust the valves. So you can see on the flywheel that T, that is to show that we have top dead center. So the intake and exhaust valves are 0.15 millimeter. So the exhaust ones were good, but I had to adjust the intakes. And you just want the feeler gauge to be snug in there, not too loose, not too tight. Okay, we're just getting this cylinder head cover put on with the gasket. And these will all be torqued down to 84 to 96 inch-pounds. Get the spark plug put in. I just reused the old one because it still looked good. Okay, we'll get the coil put on, and then we'll get the carburetor installed. And this is a little bit of a pain to get put on, so use some lubricant to put on the boot and the carburetor, and it just slides right in. Okay, and then we'll get that screw tightened down to hold the carburetor on. Okay, after the screw's tightened down, we will start cranking it over. And we'll get some starting fluid sprayed in there, see if it will fire over. And at the end of the video, pay attention to the top left. I left my sockets on the ATV and they fell onto the primary and flew everywhere. So, thank you for watching. I will have a part 3 up soon of it running and driving around.